Mayor, this is the big week in Quincy.
It is a big week, each and every year, indeed. Long tradition.
Probably one of, if not the busiest in terms of public celebrations, I would think.
I would say so, and perhaps the happiest. It's really a series of great events that bring lots of smiles to people.
Yeah, and they are back in full force this year, as opposed to the past couple of years when we've been through. So I think a lot of folks will enjoy that too.
I would definitely agree with that.
Yes. Before we talk about that, though, can we do a little recap of the fun event that happened at the Quincy Historical Society last week?
Yeah, last Friday night, that was a great night.
Yeah.
Congratulations to the team there, Ed Fitzgerald, Alexander Elliott, Jim Edwards, the whole team. Really celebrating 3 big anniversaries. 200th anniversary of John Adams' will, 150th anniversary of the Adams Academy, which was created by his wishes and his will. And then, of course, the 50th anniversary of the Historical Society being housed at the Adams Academy. And they had a great turnout, great crowd, a great vibe. It's another great resource that we have. People drive by there each and every day. Probably don't give much thought to what happens inside. It's a beautiful architectural gem, certainly when you're driving by. But that's the keeper of our history. I mean, we have obviously a lot of great historical assets, but this really keeps together our history as a city, not only about the Adamses and the great names, but a lot of the history of the industry and families, and spiritual houses of worship, you name it. It covers the gamut, and they do a great job there. The
big tent out front was a nice treat, and it was a very festive atmosphere with the lights in there for sure.
Definitely. And it, being on Adams Street there, I'm sure it caught a lot of attention, people driving by.
Right.
Thinking, what the heck is going on there?
Speaking of the Adamses, Representative Chan tells me that about $500,000 has been secured in funding for the Adams Presidential Center.
Yes, I know that Senator Keenan worked on that, and then Representative Chan and certainly Ayers, and of course the Speaker had to sign off on it. I think that's part of the economic development bill.
Yep.
We appreciate that. I think that's a nice gesture from the Commonwealth to assist us with this very ambitious project that I think is going to be terrific, of course.
Where does that stand right now in terms of planning?
Well, we fully have formed the nonprofit,
Mm-hmm.
so we are now in business as a nonprofit, and it can accept donations now. So the first meeting of the board, the founding board, is in a couple of weeks.
Oh, okay.
General Joe Dunford is chairing that, and there's a number of individuals that have agreed to go on the board. And from here out, there'll be a lot of fundraising activity from the board to raise necessary funding to get it to a place of good planning, of course, and then enough money to construct the building. So we have a ways to go, but there's a lot of excitement around it. We're getting good response. We have some real high-powered board members, so good stuff.
Very good. Can we talk, Mayor, about the Public Safety Complex? The City Council last night did approve the additional $23 million in funding to put toward that project. So what happens now?
Well, now it proceeds. As you know, we had a gap. The estimates were off, but the times we're living in, the marketplace we're living in, everything has been a little crazy, and numbers were way up in various areas, as was talked about, I assume, by my team during the hearings and committee meetings. This wasn't a case that we could just knock something off and would save $23 million. The cost of the building, the costs were sprinkled throughout the building, whether it was concrete, steel, or other pieces of what's happening for that building. It's going to be a first-class, beautiful building, beautiful to drive by and see, but more importantly, programmatically, will be very efficient for the men and women who serve in blue, and certainly the administration portion of the fire department. So it's long overdue, Joe. That addition that was done in the 80s was poorly done. It was never right. The building itself has been a problem for a long time. Certainly not user-friendly, and I'm not talking about people that come through to use a cell box, although those were pretty pitiful as well. But it wasn't a very friendly building when you went inside and tried to get assistance as public either. So every aspect of it. A lot of time and energy went into this. There'll be their own shooting range in the basement, which we from time to time would use the Boston range, but officers have to be certified every year with firearms, safety of them, how to use them, practice and so forth. So that's just one amenity that we didn't have before that will be included in the building. So, looking forward to getting it finished. We got a long way to go. As you know, Joe, the project also included moving Father Bill's, moving the animal shelter, rebuilding Broad Street, putting utilities underground, putting a new connection to Field Street. So all that civil engineering work has been well underway for months. We're looking forward to getting the foundation in the ground for the building now.
There was a suggestion that more effort should have been made to cut some of the increase and maybe use some federal pandemic relief fund at other projects around the city to cut costs here. How do you feel about that?
Well, it's just not accurate. I'm very familiar with the rules and regulations from the Department of Treasury with the ARPA money, you can't use it for the construction of the building.
The timeline now going forward, Mayor?
Good question, Joe. We're going to regroup as a team, see where we're at. Father Bill's, as you know, moving that building over, or moving the location across the street. The building's been underway for some time. It's really shaping up. Much of that had to get done first so we can move those that are staying at Father Bill's into that facility, and then knock that down, and then it's full steam ahead. And of course, once the building is done, then we knock down the old building at the corner, which I don't think will be missed by anybody, and then create a beautiful park green space that will complement the other corners of Faxon Field and, of course, the cemetery in Mount Wellston.
There was a question raised also about what happens to the current fire safety headquarters on Quincy Avenue once the administration moves over.
Well, it's still a full operating firehouse. So the administration portion of that building is a small portion of what happens at Central Firehouse. So that's not a concern. As you know, we are looking at replacing that fire station. We bought the land across the street some time ago, and when the timing is right financially, we will be undergoing a new station that will replace the old Central Firehouse. So, we're going to continue to work our infrastructure. We're going to continue to replace schools, work on other public buildings, including firehouses and libraries. We've got to maintain them. We've got to keep them up, and from time to time, sometimes they have to be replaced. So that's what's happening, obviously, with the police station. Will happen with the main firehouse in the coming years.
Of course, Mayor, Thanksgiving Day is the traditional football game between North Quincy High School, and this year, something special for POWs and MIAs that'll be taking place.
Yes, there's a tradition that goes back many years where in public auditoriums or places there's a seat designated in honor and memory of the POW MIA, and that seat stays empty in honor of the missing men and women in some cases, perhaps. But certainly, this became very, very popular after or during the Vietnam War, when we had a lot of POWs in Vietnam. We had a lot of men that never came back from World War II or Korea that were never found. Now, Quincy, I'm pretty certain everybody has been identified. Everybody has been known who we lost at their location and so forth. But across the country, that's not the case for veterans. And certainly some of the famous POWs from Quincy, Alan Bredno, did come home after 7.5 years in prison in Vietnam. Richard Stratton, still with us, retired in Florida, served 6.5 years in POW in Vietnam. Bob Noble, who was very active in the community, was a World War II POW and certainly came back and lived a great life. So I think it's wise, particularly with our stadium, which is named for the Veterans Memorial Stadium, to do this. And so prior to the game, we'll have a brief ceremony identifying the chair, explaining to the public what it's all about. And we should never forget the sacrifices made by our veterans. And this is another example of what we do here in Quincy.
So this will be right at the 50-yard line. Will this be a permanent seat?
It is a permanent seat, Joe.
It is, okay. And a plaque, I understand, will be dedicated as well?
That's right. It kind of explains why we do this. And some people aren't as aware of some of these issues. So when they see the seat, they can read the plaque of what it means.
I see.
So hopefully it'll be a teaching tool going forward.
Very good. And then the game is on.
The game is on. Yes, indeed. You never know in this game over the years. The team that everyone thought would win doesn't necessarily win. You can throw out the records, and it's certainly a nice tradition, not only for the football game, but I know it's a gathering of our community where people come together and people know where each other stand each year. They go and look for their classmates or some folks they haven't seen in a long time. Some people come home after being away for a long time and come down and say hello to some folks. So it's really a combination of a great tradition of a game, but also a reunion for our community as we come together, and certainly kicks off the day, and people then go home, of course. I'm assuming most people have turkey. I'm sure others will enjoy some other things on the menu, but Thanksgiving is a great tradition in this country, and I know that in this day and age, we've seen collectively in society a lot of unhappiness and disgruntledness, or however we want to describe it, injustice perhaps. But at the end of the day, I think this is a good day for all of us to just take a good look inside and say, there is much to be grateful for. It's still the greatest country in the world. We enjoy tremendous freedom, and we should take a moment and thank the good Lord for all the blessings we have. So I know that's certainly the spirit of which this holiday is about, and I hope people take a moment to think about that. Obviously, we'll gather with our families and have a wonderful day with those that we love. And certainly I wish everybody a great, wonderful, and happy Thanksgiving Day.
Thank you, Mayor, and from all of us here at QATV, the very same to you, your family, and your staff. We're thankful for the opportunity to bring your message to the community every week.
And we appreciate that, Joe. And I would ask one more thing of the public. Pray for good weather for tree lighting in the parade.
It's going to be warm on Sunday. I don't know about wet. That remains to be seen.
Well, that's not a good thing for the floats or the instruments.
No.
So we'll keep our fingers crossed.
Exactly. It's too soon to tell right now. So.
That's right.
Enjoy your holiday, Mayor. Thank you again.
You also. Thanks, Joe.
Bye-bye.